August marks the start of a new school year for many of our students, and this year we're excited to welcome over 600 new students to our school. Recently, I had the opportunity to meet with Niki and Trevor Sytsma, two returning students in our Doctor of Medicine program, to share their perspective and advice for those who may be new to Duke. Niki is a medical student returning for a second research year, and Trevor is an upcoming fourth-year medical student. So Niki and Trevor, thanks for joining us today. So I'll start with you, Niki. How did you choose medicine, and how did you come to Duke?
Yeah, so I'm the kid who wore a plastic stethoscope around my neck and walked around the house as a 5-year-old for no apparent reason, and then I dressed up as a doctor for Halloween every year. So something in me always wanted to be a doctor, but I think that as I got involved in sports and started going to school and studying, I found this fascination for the human body and physiology and kind of why we are the way we are and how everything works. So my mom is from Peru, and as a kid, I got to spend a lot of time with my family in Lima. And during that time, you know, as young as 4 or 5 years old, I was exposed to really vast disparities in the way that people lived their lives and the resources they had and the homes they lived in. And I think that opened my eyes to how much privilege I had growing up. And so I kind of always had this desire to give back to the folks around me. And so I think it's the combination of both. I found Duke, or decided on Duke, really because I had met people here. I knew some students that were attending Duke Medical School that I'd met prior, and they were happy. I think for me, that was the biggest thing. I know that medical school can be really difficult. There's a lot of challenges and hoops to jump through and adversity that we're going to face, but knowing that people can do so and still maintain their well-being and be happy and find joy was huge for me.
Well, students are our best salesmen, so they work very well for us.
Yeah.
But how's your experience been so far?
My experience has been very different than I imagined, but in the best way possible. I trained to become a birth doula before I came to medical school, and I was like, I'm going to be an obstetrician. I was so set on it. And then I realized that I did not like the OR. It just wasn't for me. And also, I found this specialty called family medicine, which I had never heard of before. And I fell in love with outpatient care and continuity of care.
Oh, that's great. You actually reflect advice that I give, which is keep an open mind.
Yeah.
And experience each part of medicine, and then you never know where it's going to take you. What about you, Trevor? You came from the West Coast, right?
I did. I'm from Seattle originally, and I spent my gap years working at the University of Washington at Harborview Medical Center. And during those 2 years of living in pandemic times on top of the gloomy Pacific Northwest weather, I was ready to leave the PNW. And similar to Niki, it was the students at the time that really sold me on Duke. I felt like Duke students were by far the happiest and the best balanced out of students that I was speaking with at other institutions as well, and seeing how they had opportunities to engage in those things that were co-curricular and outside of their clinical pursuits that really brought them joy was kind of a selling point for me. And I was so impressed with the other students that were considering Duke, Niki for one, and felt like these were people that I really wanted to have as my peers.
So you met each other?
We were in the same group for that revisit. I remember
that.
That's
so
we were.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Duke does a couple things with how we look at applicants here. I mean, Duke has the longest secondary application of any school in the country right now.
At least 8
and
questions.
so the holistic review, I thought, really spoke for itself in the types of people that I was meeting. Didn't discourage me.
Good.
Took a while to get through all those essays, but I'm so glad that I did. And I was also really drawn to Duke strength and anesthesia. I kind of had an inkling early as I was applying that might be a field I would go into. So loved to hear that Duke had such great work happening in the field of anesthesia. But I was also starting to get interested in clinical nutrition and this whole food as medicine movement, and saw Duke as one of the few places where students were really driving that work.
And you've really gotten yourself involved in that.
Yeah, I have. There's a group called Root Causes here.
Right, I know it well.
Yeah, Root Causes. It's a student-driven group aiming to create different clinic community partnerships, trying to address different social drivers of health in Durham.
I think what is really most symptomatic of our students is the fact that all of these projects are student-oriented. They start with students and they grow from the students' interest, which is really terrific. So Niki, you've chosen to do a second year of research, right?
I have.
Tell me about that.
So I got involved with medical education research, which was kind of new at Duke. I think it's maybe the third year that they've offered that as a track. And I really was motivated to see if we could improve the exposure that medical students get to lactation education. I worked with some awesome mentors to pilot a clinical intervention where students get to work with lactation experts throughout their year with Pioneer, that's the new clinical kind of component of the second year of medical school. And they get to work with lactation consultants and breastfeeding medicine specialists that we have at Duke, and just get like hands-on exposure to what supporting families at that period of their life looks like. So I was really lucky that Duke allowed me, or makes it really easy for students to kind of continue their research if they're motivated to keep going and finish the project they've started.
That's terrific. So we welcomed a new class of medical students. This is your opportunity to give them advice. So Trevor, what would you tell the new students?
All of our training programs can feel really all-consuming and high stakes at times. And I'd say just as we are always encouraged to remember our patients are whole people and have unique sets of values and relationships and stories that make them who they are, remember that you too are a whole person, and you should look out for yourself and those things that have brought you into medicine and those things that sustain you outside of medicine. And I think Duke, because of our curricular structure, it really allows us to invest in some of those things that sustain us. And so I'd encourage new students, as stressful as these programs can be and how intense they can feel, to remember to take some time for yourself as well.
Really good advice. And what about you, Niki?
I think that's huge. And then I'll add on, if you're anything like Trevor and I, which I'm sure students are, because Duke recruits people that are motivated to make change when they see change needs to be made, just remember when you get here to take a deep breath and listen and see kind of what's going on and where you can best put your skills. Like Trevor said, you can learn so much from folks who have lived experience kind of dealing with the issues that face the Durham community right now, or people that have started working on different initiatives and already made lots of great strides in that area. So take a second, take a deep breath, and listen and learn, and then go for it. Kind of follow your dreams and your passions, because Duke's going to support you to achieve what you want to achieve here.
Also great advice. And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Klotman.